Welcome to your real estate market update. We're at the beginning of April. I hope you're having a great spring. If you're here locally in the Triangle, I hope you've survived the pollen season. I feel like it's been extra bad this year. We have a lot of great information to go over today, and there's a lot of bright spots in the real estate market. I know that we're blanketed with negative news all the time, but there's a lot of positives in the real estate market today. If you're a buyer or a seller and you're on the fence, hopefully this will help you make an informed decision that's best for you. And if you're just checking out this video because you're interested in what's going on in the real estate market here and nationally, hopefully the information is helpful. As always, if you have any questions or feedback, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm going to share my screen and we'll get right into it. So for the last few market updates, I've talked about this. Inventory is increasing. So that's great news if you're a buyer. What we're looking at here is new listings are up over the last few years. This is March of each year, and you can see where we are in 2025. So we've seen a steady increase since 2023, and we're on par with 2022. So 2022 is significant because that was the year the Feds decided to start raising interest rates. They wanted to slow down the market, slow down inflation, soften buyer demand. So that's what was significant about that year. I would also point out that we're below pre-pandemic years, so 2017, 2018, and 2019. And these were really the last three normal real estate years before we got into the pandemic years. What's going on here locally in the real estate market with new listings? I'm looking at Raleigh, Cary, and Durham and just focusing on those three cities today. But when we look at new listings, you can see we've been trending up since December. And this is normal. I mean, if we look at a 3-year trend, that might be better. You can see we've had some volatility. Well, that's seasonality. We saw a reintroduction of seasonality a couple years ago. And so as we get into, we usually peak March or spring, summer market, and then we trend down as we get into the fall and closer to the holidays. So less people put their homes on the market that time of year. It's really if they have to sell. Then when we get into the new year, January, February are typically slower months, and then we kind of heat up and go into the spring market. We see our new listings go up because a lot of people wait till the spring to put their home on the market because they really want to try to maximize their return on investment. So we have seen that in 2025. So we've seen that exact seasonality that we have typically seen. So May, we trended down from May, really bottomed out in December, and then started to see new listings increase going into the first quarter. How do we compare to March of 2024? Well, all three cities have seen an increase. Raleigh at almost 20%, Cary at 18%, and Durham at 15%. So this is new listings coming on the market for that month. Now, some of you may say, well, if we have more inventory available, does that mean, it's a crisis or anything like that? It's not. I would show you this is the month supply, and you can see when we look at the month supply of homes available for sale, Raleigh and Durham are below a 3-month supply. Cary is below a 2-month supply. This is significant because a normal and balanced market is about a 6 to 8 month supply of homes. So you can see we've increased significantly. So 90% increase in month supply, but we're still a long way away from a normal and balanced market in these three cities. So I go to a quote here that I thought was good. Buyers had more homes to choose from this March, with the number of homes actively for sale up 28.5% compared to the same time last year. It marks the 17th month in a row of year-over-year inventory growth. So great news if you are a buyer in the market. You have more options available to you today than you have in the past few years. What's going on with mortgage rates? Well, I have a screenshot from Mortgage Daily News. Last week, we ended the week with rates around 6.6%. This week, they've ticked up at 6.75, but you can see this trend line. You can see we're below where we were last year at this time, and they've been trending down. The good news is rates are trending down faster than expected. So experts projected that the first quarter rates would be around 7%. We're actually below that. So, and as we go into the second quarter, which we are in right now, they projected we'd be at about 6.8. We're below that. So we'll keep an eye on interest rates and see what happens with that. If you're a buyer in the market, though, and you're looking at this trend line, you're saying, oh, wow, well, I'm going to wait till the fourth quarter to buy because that's really when the rates are going to be the lowest. Just remember, the lower the rates get, the more buyers qualify, the more buyers you would potentially be competing with when you're trying to buy a home. So I always tell folks, if you can swing it at the higher rates and you find the right house, make the move. You can always refinance when the rates come down. So that's something to take into consideration. I also think that this is very important, and I've had something pretty similar in the last couple market updates. Even though rates have fallen over the past several weeks and look more promising to prospective home buyers, We are far from the home finance environment of the post-pandemic home buying frenzy where rates were below 4%. I think it's going to be a long time before we see that. We're unlikely to return to that environment. So that's just something to think about. If you're thinking about making a move, if you're trying to, don't time the market, don't try to wait for the perfect rate, look for the perfect house, focus on, affordability, mortgage payment, looking at what you're spending on a monthly basis on costs and things like that. And I have a lot of videos on my YouTube channel, Welcome to Raleigh, all about that. So be sure to check those out. Homes are taking a little bit longer to sell. So this is good news as well for buyers. This means you have more time. So you have more homes to look at, which is great news. They're taking a little bit longer to sell. So you can get your questions answered. You can go back and take a second look. It's not the environment where you're having to make a decision before you even get to the property. So in 2025, this is median days on market, March of each year, 53 days on market. And you can see we're ahead of 2021, 22, 23, and 24, but still below pre-pandemic years or the last 3 years of the normal real estate market. How does that compare to us locally? When we look at days on market, I'm going to look at a 1-year trend. It's a little bit easier on the eyes. But we see the seasonality affect this as well. So days on market typically goes up in January and then starts to trend down as we get into the spring market. So we've seen that same trend this year. And all 3 cities are right around 30 days on the market. Now, this is significant and something to think about and something I'm going to mention. This is just a large area, and this is taking an average, right? If you're thinking about selling, we're in a different environment than we were in 2021. So I know a lot of sellers that I meet with always think about that time period and what so-and-so got and how fast their home sold. Our market is shifting, and so it starts with days on market. So I think if you're thinking about selling, the market is normalizing. So you want to have a good understanding of what's going on in your neighborhood specifically, right? You want to know how long are homes taking to sell, how many are on the market, and you want to look at more recent data. So what I typically look at is 6 months, and then I narrow down to the last 90 days because we've seen a shift over the last few months. So I would say, this is good to look at and overall to say that Raleigh's at a 1-month supply, but your neighborhood might not be performing as well as the rest of Raleigh. And that means our market is normalizing. So what I see is some areas are doing better than others. Some homes are taking longer to sell and they're sitting on the market. Some homes are selling fast and some homes are selling fast and getting more than one offer. And that, again, is a sign that our market is going back to a normal, healthy market. So that's something to take into consideration. And I want to just point out an example here. I recently sold a home in Carolina Preserve, so I'm going to use this as an example, this community in particular. And it's also a large community, so there's about 1,300 homes. So it's a good sample size, I think. So when I look at the last 6 months of sales, so what happened in the last 6 months, these are, 32 homes have sold and they averaged 18 days on the market. Wow, that's really fast, right? But then we narrow down to what's gone on in the last 90 days. And when we look at what's sold, the days on market increased. So went up to 27 days. So 18 versus 27 days. So that's significant. That's a change in the market. You also want to look at how long pending homes that are under contract, how long did they take to get under contract? So those are just things that if you're thinking about selling, you really want to know what's going on right in your neighborhood. We can look at what's going on nationally, but real estate is really local. And, some parts of North Carolina are even doing better than others. So that's something to just think about. If you're thinking about selling, and you're meeting with agents, these are the questions you're going to want to be asking. So that's days on market. And one more quote from somebody in March, this quote from realtor.com. In March, the typical home for sale spent 53 days on the market, 3 days longer than the same time last year. However, homes still moving faster than they did before the pandemic. So that 53 days is a faster days on market than March 2017 through March 2019. Next, we'll talk about home prices. So a lot of times people think, well, if there's more homes available for sale, they're taking longer to sell, home prices must be coming way down. And that's not necessarily the case. Home price growth is relatively flat, or we're seeing a slower rate of growth. And that's what experts have projected for us on a national level this year. It looks a little different when we look at what's going on locally in our market. I'll go back to this. And this is Raleigh, Cary, and Durham. You can see compared to March of last year, the average home price was up 7.6%. Durham, it was up 9%, and Cary, it was off almost 2%. And I think some of Cary, I think that has to do with inventory availability. When we look at month supply, they're typically significantly behind these other two cities. There's just not many homes available for sale. So I sometimes think these anomalies with Cary have to do with that limited inventory availability, but really not off very much when compared to last year. You can see we've had some volatility over the last several months. But overall, we're seeing positive growth in the average sales price here in the Triangle. And I'll add in the entire Triangle MLS, you can see is flat versus last year. So when we take in that huge area of the entire Triangle MLS, and that includes a much larger geographical area in several counties, when we take that into consideration, the average sales price is relatively flat versus last year. So that really kind of mirrors up with what's going on nationally. When we look at these three cities and we break them out, it looks a little bit different. So prices are expected to rise this year. They're still expected to increase. I do anticipate we'll see them continue to increase here in the Triangle as well, but at a slower rate, which is good news. Slower growth means healthier, normal, more balanced market. So prices are expected to rise this year, though most will do so more slowly than they did last year. Slower growth is good news for buyers who have locked in their budgets and are saving for down payments. So that's according to Zillow. So one of the things I did want to touch on too, so we talked about at the beginning, there's a lot of negative news. I think there's bright spots in the real estate market. So inventory is on the rise. Rates are coming down. So that means, there's more homes available for the buyers that are coming into the market. They're taking a little bit longer to sell. So you have more time to make a decision. All of those are great things. And they're great for buyers and sellers. They're indications that we're going back to a more normal and balanced market, a healthy market, and that's good for everybody. But I know there has been talk about a recession, and so that causes people, that instills fear in some people. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. And I think I've shown this slide before, and it's a screenshot, so I'm sorry if it's a little fuzzy, but recession does not necessarily mean falling home prices. And this shows the last 6 recessions and what happened with home prices during those recessions. So obviously, when you hear recession, everybody thinks about 2008 and what happens to that, because a lot of people were very negatively affected, and that's very affected, and that's automatically where a lot of people's mind goes to when they think of recession. That's not necessarily the case this year. With regard to every single recession that we're ever going to have, it's not going to look like this. But if you look at the last 4 of 6 recessions, home prices have actually gone up during those recessions. So, and why is that? Because in all of the last 6 recessions, mortgage rates have actually come down. So more buyers have qualified and have made a move. And the other thing I think I would show you as well in closing is that, a lot of folks think recession, they think 2008, they think the housing market is going to crash. The difference here is we don't have the same level of inventory. And then also Americans are sitting on a massive amount of equity. Almost over 68% have paid off their mortgage or at least have 50% equity in their home. So it's unlikely that we would see the massive crash that we saw in 2008. We just don't have, there's not the foreclosures. You don't see the same new construction inventory. You don't see the same resale inventory. So there's a lot of factors that are not present that were during 2008. So I thought this was interesting as well to look at that, a huge percentage of Americans have paid off their mortgage or have at least 50% equity. So hopefully that information is helpful for you. Again, if you have questions on the real estate market or you have any feedback on the video, I'd love to get your thoughts. Don't hesitate to reach out. If you're a buyer or seller and you want more information, more videos like this, check out my YouTube channel, Welcome to Raleigh. If you're considering the area, check out Welcome to Raleigh. There's a lot of community tours, city tours, buyer tips, seller tips, and more information on the real estate market. I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.